The book itself is a very consumable product because I think chapters tend to be 3 or 4 pages long a piece, and it gives you a snapshot of the history. It gives you the argument that's happening at the time. And your concept for a law professor at Georgetown University, you actually want to make law and constitutional law accessible to actual people.
Well, and I consider my students to be actual people, and
well, they're not people until they become lawyers. And
right.
Then
Well,
it's
they're halfway in between. They're
Yeah.
quasi actual people, quasi lawyers at this
Yeah.
point. But I was up in front of them this morning, and then I had our exam is next week, so I had 6 or 8 of them in my office, sitting on the floor, asking me questions today, and they're no different than anybody else. Matt, you could take this course. And for one thing, it's all new to them. They may have taken other courses, but they haven't taken this course. And so this story is new to them.
Yeah.
And I think it's best understood as a story. And once I started teaching this way, all of a sudden the exam performances started to go way, way up. And we got everybody along. People got it better or worse, but even the people at the bottom of the class basically get the story.
It's funny that you use storytelling, because that's the whole reason of what we do at Free the People, is that we're trying to explain ideas, and in our case, more about economics than law, in the context of a often personal story, maybe a historical story as well. And our theory is that that's more interesting to people than economics. God help us, as an economist.
Well, my last book, Our Republican Constitution, I turned the manuscript in. It had been accepted, my first trade book, accepted by HarperCollins. I was having celebratory dinner with my editor in New York and thinking, oh, this is great. I'm done. They gave me a nice advance. And then he says over dinner, it's not accessible enough. And I was like crestfallen, like I did the best I could. I wrote the whole book. You already accepted it. Like, what am I going to do now? And I said, what does it need? And he says, it needs more stories.
Yeah.
So basically I said, well, I can do that. And I went and found a story of they're all different kinds of stories, like, the Revolutionary War story or other sorts of stories, or even my own stories about arguing the medical marijuana case in the Supreme Court. So every chapter starts with a story to illustrate what's going to happen after that. He was satisfied that we'd really hit the mark. But the other thing that was interesting is I actually, in finding these stories, learned stuff about what the subject of the chapter was that I didn't know before I found the story. I had to read a book about the Declaration of Independence because that was what I'm going to talk about. And I learned stuff about the Declaration that turned out to be really significant for understanding the proper theory of government that we have in this country. Anyway, it turns out I think I'm going to always try to write this way from now on. I think stories are the way people learn.